What's the end game with Lance? And what is your belief? I thought there was a very good chance, based on the dialogue, that they were going to shop him during the draft. They created room by renegotiating McCaffrey's deal going into the draft, so they could have moved him if they had gotten an offer. John? You got sources around the league. I mean, were they shopping him? Were they just listening? Is there not a lot of interest, or was it just not a lot of interest at the Niners price tag? What's your read on how the league may feel about Trey?
Well, he just said put his value, worsen it. I mean, I don't think his value is very high. I mean, he's already in the third year of a high first-round pick contract. So it'd be one thing if he made $1 million. I think then they could have easily flipped him for like a third-round pick, right, to get a couple years at 2.
He makes 10, right?
He makes a lot. And then after this year, what happens? You got to pick up his fifth-year option. So it's his most valuable years. The Niners used up, right? They've already happened. And this is really his last valuable year, right? This was the year that after this year, Josh Allen, Mahomes, those guys got extended. Joe Burrow's going to get extended. Herbert's going to get extended. So those first 3 years is when you really take advantage of. And the Niners did, right? They've had a loaded roster because they don't pay a quarterback. But I don't think you could trade him for anything higher than a fourth-round pick at best. And that I don't think any good offers. And then the teams that might have been interested took quarterbacks, right? I mean, Houston.
Right. Indy.
Houston had the connection. Tennessee had the connection. Both of them took 2 quarterbacks in the top 35 picks. Now, the one thing Guy and I have talked about is at the Raiders practice, if Jimmy is injured and never gets right, which who knows with him, right? He gets injured a lot. What if Trey's okay there and they're desperate? Maybe you can get like a Raiders 4th-round pick to just – because they don't have another – if Jimmy can't play, they're screwed.
Because did they let the backup go?
I just think he got Sean Payton.
Stidham went to Miami.
Money.
Yeah, Stidham's gone, yeah.
Denver,
I kind of like
Miami?
Stidham against the Niners. He didn't look good the next week.
Oh, maybe it was Denver. I'm sorry.
Kansas
Denver.
City.
Did he go to Miami?
I thought it was.
I don't think it's Miami, but he's not there, right?
I think
He's
John's
in
right.
He's
I
in
think
Denver.
Yeah.
Where'd Mike White go? Miami?
Miami.
Yeah.
What do you think, Guy?
In fairness, would you pay Stidham $5 million off one game? I mean, it's not, it's kind of risky.
The other part of John's theory there being, if he looks good in Vegas, Mark Davis might be the guy that tells Josh, this is what we're doing. As opposed to it just being a Josh McDaniels decision.
That's
right. Jed York would not go to a practice and say, hey, I like that guy, go get him. But Mark might.
One more super here from Miguel Ruiz. He says, Jesus, Brock is the starter. Let's move on. Trey is the Niners' fault because they made the pick and now will not let him go. With that said, love the content from all of you. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Miguel.
Larry's got that Silicon Valley base here. You're getting just super chats left and right here.
Oh, they're making it rain in here.
You get 25 years KNBR, the whole Bay, the rich areas know about Larry.
We got this one. Mike Monahan says, Crocker's in the chat. Get him on the screen and make this show epic. Is Croc in the chat? I didn't see that. I'm so focused on the guests here.
Croc's looking good.
Crocky.
I love Crocs. I've had him on before. He's outstanding. There he is. Here's what Croc said. He said Fields has had 2 good plays that game. Outside of that, he was bad versus the Niners. He hasn't been a good passer. Maybe it's the lack of weapons, though. I think this year he'll figure it out.
His rushing touchdown was just...
And his lack of weapons is real. By the way, that was kind of a surprise. Is they're bad-mouthing Chase Claypool? Is Chase Claypool a bum?
Well,
God, it sounds like
Pittsburgh too, didn't they?
Sounds like they don't hit Chase Claypool doesn't work that hard. I always liked him at Notre Dame. I thought he was good.
Look at him.
Guy's a behemoth.
The
Steelers didn't like him.
That was a disaster trade. They traded the 33rd pick for Chase Claypool. I mean, that was Roquan Smith went for less. I mean, that was
some of the best receivers in the NFL go 33rd.
They'd like that one back, especially it'd be like in Billy Bean's prime, not this version, but like back when he was sweet. You just don't do a deal with him. You're going to trade for a Steelers wide receiver. Why are they putting on the guy?
Yeah. I mean, okay. A couple other Niner thoughts, non-quarterbacks. So it doesn't sound like you guys are real believers in Trey. I mean, I don't know what
the team is not, Larry. The team is not. So why?
Yeah.
If Kyle's not, if John's not really anymore, and the core players, who I understand people on the internet feel very loyal to this for I don't know, how could you be holding on Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, all the star players are kind of lukewarm. Like, so the guy on Twitter's and that's where his support is. Which again, this doesn't speak to the guy, but as a player, I don't understand. Like, we're screwing up. Like, based on what? Like, we've seen pretty good football teams now. They got a pretty good eye for talent, I would say. They've proven themselves.
For me, it's less about believing in him, and it is more about just recognizing the way the Niners quarterback situation has played out the last several years. And I am open to the possibility that his shot comes in some weird way that we can't concoct right now, because that's the way Niners quarterbacks play. I mean, the Kaepernick thing was bananas when he just took over and it was like, you can't lose your job if you're hurt, which of course you can. So that went on for a while. Then Jimmy just falls in their lap because Bill decided to call Kyle. So that thing works out for a little bit. Then they draft Trey, and Jimmy is gone until he somehow returns right before the season last year and has a really good year. Then he gets hurt, and Brock Purdy, the last pick in the draft on a team with a very expensive quarterback previously, Jimmy, and a very expensive and highly drafted Trey Lance, becomes the biggest story in the NFL. So I can't sit here and pretend like, oh, I don't see a road for Trey Lance to play again, because there's got to be one. That's the story of this team. And, you know, short of Brock being healthy plus really good, Kyle is just always open to mixing things up a little bit. And I throw Sam in the mix. So it's not that I've given up on Trey, Larry. It's just, no, I'm open to the possibility that he gets a shot again. But, you know, I also think Kyle, by his actions, has told us kind of where he's at with him. And he doesn't call games for him the way he does his other quarterbacks.
He doesn't even call him the same thing. He calls him a dual threat quarterback. He calls his other guys quarterbacks, and this guy's a dual threat quarterback.
But this gets back to what does he do well? And think about Kaepernick and Jimmy Garoppolo. When Kaepernick began starting, you could just set the team in the pistol, and he knew that like the back of his hand. He had that mastered from his time with the little general in Nevada, right? So you could just ease into doing that and then take some shots with his big arm off that. Jimmy Garoppolo, what did he do well? Well, he'd been in the league for a long time with the Patriots, so understanding like running a huddle he could do, and he'd get rid of the ball fast. He just hang his hat on doing a couple of those things immediately. Like, what does Trey Lance if he's got to start week one, like what can you just do that you know works?
I mean, let's look at what he did at North Dakota State. They ran it 45 times a game. He threw it 16 times a game. He operated there and took care of the football in a run-heavy scheme that required him to make very few efficient throws. I mean, just be an efficient thrower, not be any kind of a volume thrower. So,
where his team had a dramatic talent / coaching gap, I would say. What do you think? 90% of the games?
I would say they were the Bama of that level of football, of FCS, maybe even better.
I wonder if you could make the argument at that level the gap's even wider than Alabama versus Ole Miss or something.
No, I think that's a good point. I have a little bit more belief that he's going to improve, but I need to see it, and it needs to be fast. It's got to be significant. Like what the guy that we see on the field, like I've been at everything. I've been at every game, every practice, everything. I've seen improvements.
There's a grinder.
But the improvements are slight. They're slight improvements. They're not significant improvements.
You agree with that? His throwing motion looked tighter at OTAs?
Yeah, but I mean, you're talking about a quarterback with a 10% drop percentage that first year and the high-speed wobbles. I mean, anybody who's ever played receiver will tell you that's the hardest ball to catch. And throwing a catchable football is, I think, one of the most underrated aspects.
Oh, you're blaming the drops
on
the wobble? I've never even equated that.
Bill Walsh would have, right?
Oh, the high-speed wobbles? Wild wobble?
Slow. Yeah.
But Trey's throwing
and Phillip Rivers, their wobbles are slower. Yeah, easier to catch.
Well, I mean, I don't know. It's interesting though. The players do like Trey as the person, and they really do admire his work ethic. And if you listen to John and Kyle and anybody who speaks about him, they're always talking about his non-football traits. The only thing that bothers me is they never, ever get to the football traits. And when I had a chance to talk to Brian Greasy, he talked more about his stick-to-itiveness and how hard he works and how the failure didn't get him down and this and that. But he never talked about his football, his release, his ball handling, his footwork, they're just, it's like, we're going to stay on ground that we're solid with. And we're not going to make any statements at all about anything that it's a little murky until we see it. And so I think they're very much in a prove there. I think to them, he's in a kind of a prove it to them stage. And I think they're waiting on it.
So you're Team Darnold, it sounds like, Larry.
I don't believe in Darnold at all. I think Darnold turned it over too much at SC and turned it over too much with the Jets. And I think Darnold, to me, has a hitch in his delivery. And, I think that you can, as a DB, you get an extra step and a half of a break on his passes because he's got a hitch and he telegraphs where he's going with the ball. I think it has a lot to do with the high interceptions he's always thrown. But I do think that Darnold throws a hell of a ball. He really does. I mean, I will say that. I think he's no doubt in my mind that
greatest
he's
ball in 49er history. Ball?
I don't know about that. I'll say this. I got a buddy of mine who scouts in the league, and he'll remain nameless to protect his anonymity. But he told me the other day. He told me the other day that in his mind, Brock's the best quarterback they have, and Brandon Allen's the second best quarterback they have. And I
did see a very good Brandon Allen practice this year.
What? Haberman came back from practice and was like, "Listen,
remember that
Darnold,
throw to Willie
Trey,
Snead, Larry?
Brandon
Yes.
Allen."
He was dotting some dimes.
Now, the other practice I watched, his arm just does not match up with those other guys.
But it's
played
more
NFL.
than an arm strength thing, right? I'm sorry to
he's
interrupt.
better than Josh Johnson and CJ Beathard. I'm not saying that I'm not trying to be snarky.
Right.
They have played with worse quarterbacks than Brandon. Kyle has played with worse. Although the Josh thing was a little emergency, but
he's been the backup for one of the best teams in the league the last couple of years, right? In the Bengals, he was Joe Burrow's backup. Yeah. So he's a team entrusted him that a guy went down he could come in. So this guy has experience of just operating like the backup. Coaches really value that. Just the guy's comfortable in his own skin, holding the clipboard. Like I would keep an eye on that guy because you guys saying his praise. Haberman's like, this guy's making some throws. Well, if you could notice that on the sideline, you better believe Kyle's noticing that. And what happened last year? Purdy. It just, the wheel kept going in a positive direction. Then all of a sudden, he makes the team, and they cut Sudfeld. Now it's not a perfect. I don't really know how you put the piece of the puzzle together, but he's a guy to keep an eye on because he's going to know football, know the offense, because the Bengals run, I would say, West Coast versions of stuff. And there's just the other two guys battling it out. Like, I wouldn't just sleep on this guy getting cut. Now that you keep three quarterbacks. Now, could you trade, if Sam beats out Trey, could you trade Trey to kind of give him a new start? Because do you want Trey around as the third quarterback? This gets back to if you think Brandon Allen's just as good and you could somehow relieve yourself of some money. Like the Vikings didn't cut Dalvin Cook because he can't play. They cut Dalvin Cook because we're not paying you $14 million. Right?
It's a cap sport.
Yeah. So it's like, now I think other teams were like, well, you don't want him, but you think we want the $10 million. They'd have to eat probably some of Trey's contract, maybe split the difference over the next couple of years. But I do think that's on the table of him not being a lock, assuming Brandon Allen is solid and you feel good about, because Brandon Allen would immediately be one of the better third quarterbacks in the NFL.
Why did he come to the Niners?
Well,
he was the backup to Joe Burrow, and now he's going to be the number 4 guy here. Why did Darnold race to come here to the Niners after starting at Carolina? It makes you either think that the Niners commented something to their agents like, hey, this guy, one of these guys.
They would have had to comment to the agents.
No, the Bengals, they had to get Trevor Siemian and Jake Browning in there. So that's why he saw the writing on the wall.
Now that's good. What is that little thing in front of the 2 there? Does that mean I'm being paid in like chicken cents?
That's pounds, Larry. That's pounds.
What is that?
Is that pounds?
Pounds?
That's something else.
I need somebody who's a little bit more worldly on my donations.
Yeah, one time someone gave us like $500. I'm like, geez, Louise. And it turned out it was like yen or the peso.
Oh, it was what's the Mexican?
The peso.
Peso. It was pesos.
So what am I looking at there? Fish and chips?
I think we're looking at $2.50 American. After
Oh, look at that.
After,
Look at that.
After Google gets its cut.